Rahim stepped into the animal shelter on a warm and busy afternoon, not really planning to take any animal home. He had only come because a friend worked there and had asked him to stop by for a quick visit. The shelter smelled of cleaning liquids and old blankets, and the sound of barking echoed from every direction. People walked by holding small puppies, laughing and taking pictures. Others pointed at friendly-looking dogs, wagging their tails behind the metal bars. It was a place full of movement, energy, and hope. But something still felt heavy in the air. As Rahim walked down the narrow hallway between the kennels, his eyes landed on a small dog sitting alone in the corner of her cage. Unlike the other dogs who barked for attention, she stayed silent. Her eyes watched everything with a mixture of fear and calmness, like she had seen too much and expected nothing. Her fur was uneven, with patches that looked like they had grown back after a long struggle. Her body looked thinner than normal, giving her a strange, almost fragile shape. Most visitors took one glance at her and quickly walked past, choosing the more cheerful dogs that jumped against the metal bars. A shelter worker standing nearby noticed Rahim looking at her and sighed softly. "She's been here for weeks," the worker said. "People don't usually stop for her. They say she looks too odd." Rahim stepped closer. The dog lifted her head a little, just enough to meet his eyes. Her gaze wasn't aggressive or sad, just quiet, cautious, and tired. He noticed something else. A small tattoo inside her left ear, faded but still visible. He leaned down to get a better look. It was a simple mark, almost like a symbol or a code. "What's that tattoo?" he asked. The worker shrugged. "We think she belonged to some organization before she ended up on the streets. We're not sure. Her details are missing. She was found wandering alone. Very weak. We tried to locate her previous owners, but no one came forward." Rahim nodded slowly. He didn't understand why, but something about that tattoo pulled at him. A strange feeling settled in his chest like a memory hiding under dust. Something he could almost reach, but not quite. The worker continued speaking. "She's gentle, but she's scared of sudden movements. People don't want dogs that need extra care. And, honestly," the worker hesitated a moment, "she's scheduled for removal from the adoption list soon. Too many dogs come in, and we don't have space." Rahim frowned. "What does that mean?" The worker looked down. "It means she might not get another chance here." Rahim looked back at the dog. She was still watching him. Still quiet. There was no hope in her eyes, but there was acceptance, like she had learned not to expect kindness. Something inside Rahim tightened. He didn't come here to adopt a dog. He wasn't even planning for responsibility. He lived a simple life, with normal routines and no extra complications. But as he stood there, staring into those tired eyes and that tattoo he couldn't ignore, every part of him felt like this moment mattered. The worker started walking away. "If you want to look at the other dogs, hold on," Rahim said suddenly, surprising even himself. "I'll take her." The worker stopped and looked back, confused. "Are you sure? You don't have to rush. We have many dogs, healthy ones, friendly ones." "I'm sure," Rahim said without hesitation. "I'll take her." The worker blinked. "This one? You want this dog?" "Yes," Rahim replied. "Her." The dog lifted her head again, this time a little higher than before, as if trying to understand what was happening. Within minutes, Rahim was signing the adoption papers. The worker explained the dog's brief medical history, her need for patience, and the fact that she might take time to trust anyone. Rahim listened carefully to every word, but his decision didn't waver. He felt calm, like he was doing something he was meant to do. When the worker brought the dog out of the kennel, she walked slowly, her steps cautious but steady. She didn't pull away when Rahim gently held the leash. She didn't hide behind the worker or bark at strangers. She simply walked beside him like she had known him for years, even though she hadn't. Rahim bent down and softly touched her head. She flinched for a moment, then relaxed a little when she realized he wasn't going to hurt her. He whispered quietly, "You're safe now." He didn't know her story. He didn't know why she was in such a broken state, or where she had come from, or how she had survived months alone. But as he walked toward the exit with her beside him, he felt a strange warmth spread through him, like he was reconnecting with something forgotten long ago. Outside the shelter, the sunlight fell on her uneven fur, and for a moment Rahim noticed that despite everything, despite her odd appearance, her thin body, her silent nature, there was something strong about her, something that had kept her alive, something that refused to let her give up. She sat down near his feet while he unlocked his car door. For the first time, he saw a small spark of trust in her eyes. It was faint, almost invisible, but it was there. As he helped her into the car, the tattoo caught the sunlight again. Rahim stared at it, trying to recall why it felt so familiar. He didn't remember yet, but he felt certain that the memory was there somewhere, waiting to come back. The drive home was quiet. The dog curled up on the seat, trembling a little, but she didn't make any noise. Rahim kept glancing at her every few minutes. The more he looked at her, the more he felt that choosing her wasn't a mistake. It didn't feel forced or random. It felt right, like something that had been meant to happen. When he reached his home, he gently guided her inside. She walked slowly, sniffing every corner with careful steps. She looked unsure, but Rahim didn't rush her. He let her take her time, explore the space, and feel safe. He placed a bowl of fresh water near her and set down a soft blanket. She hesitated, then slowly lay on it, curling her body as if protecting herself from something she remembered. Rahim sat nearby, giving her space but staying close enough so she knew she wasn't alone. As evening came, she finally lifted her head and looked at him again. This time, her gaze was softer, not fully trusting yet, but no longer afraid. It was a small step, but an important one. Rahim smiled gently, not wanting to frighten her. "You're home," he whispered. He didn't know why he felt such a deep connection so quickly. He didn't know why her tattoo felt important, but he did know one thing. There was a reason she crossed his path. A reason he reacted so fast. A reason she felt familiar, even though they had never met. In that quiet moment, with the fading sunlight spreading across the room, Rahim sensed that this dog, odd, fragile, silent, would change his life in ways he couldn't yet understand. And deep inside, the dog seemed to sense it too. Rahim woke up early the next morning, long before sunrise, because he wanted to check on the dog. He had placed her bed near the window so she could rest in a quiet corner. When he stepped into the room, he saw her curled tightly on the blanket, her eyes half open, as if she had been awake for hours. She lifted her head, but didn't move. It was clear that she still didn't feel completely safe. Rahim sat on the floor a short distance away, giving her space. "Good morning," he said softly. His voice was gentle, steady, almost like he was talking to a scared child. She blinked slowly, her ears twitching at his tone. Then she lowered her head again. But Rahim noticed she wasn't trembling as much as the night before. That small change made him hopeful. He prepared a simple breakfast for her and placed the bowl in front of her bed. At first, she didn't touch it. She kept watching him carefully, her eyes moving between him and the food. Rahim stayed quiet, avoiding sudden movements. After a few minutes, she finally stretched her neck forward and began to eat. It was slow and cautious, but watching her eat felt like watching a heavy door unlocking little by little. Later in the day, Rahim decided to clean her ear gently, to check the tattoo more closely. He grabbed a warm cloth and sat beside her. She watched him approach with a nervous look. But after a moment, she stayed calm. As he cleaned the ear, the tattoo became clearer. It wasn't just a simple mark. It was a symbol one he had seen before. Years ago. He froze for a moment, staring at it. A strange feeling washed over him, like something inside him had been triggered. A memory, still blurry, still distant, began to surface, but not fully enough for him to understand. He shook his head lightly, trying to focus on the present. The dog stared at him with soft eyes, as if sensing his sudden shift in mood. A few hours passed, and Rahim decided to take her outside for fresh air. He opened the door slowly and stepped out into the small garden in front of his home. She followed him, walking with tiny, careful steps, as though she had forgotten what open space felt like. The sunlight touched her fur, and she squinted, tilting her head upward as if trying to remember what warmth felt like. As they walked around, Rahim found himself constantly glancing at her tattoo. The symbol pulled at his memory like a quiet whisper. He couldn't stop thinking about where he had seen it. He knew it wasn't random. He knew it meant something. He just didn't know what yet. Later that evening, the memory finally began to break through. Rahim was sitting on the sofa, and the dog rested near his feet. The house was quiet, and the only sound was the distant hum of traffic. He leaned back, his gaze drifting toward the tattoo again. Suddenly, a strong flash of memory hit him. A mountain, a storm, the sound of collapsing earth. Rahim sat up straight, his heart racing. Years ago, he had traveled through a mountain area for work. He remembered heavy rain, slippery slopes, and then the sudden landslide that had pulled him down the hill. He had been trapped, injured, and alone for hours. He remembered shouting for help until his voice broke, but no one heard him. But then, he remembered a bark, a desperate, determined bark cutting through the wind. Rahim closed his eyes, letting the memory unfold. He remembered a dog approaching him through the rubble. The dog barked again and again, pushing aside broken branches, circling him, refusing to leave. That dog had a tattoo. That dog belonged to a rescue team. That dog had saved his life by alerting the rescuers. Rahim opened his eyes slowly, feeling breathless. The dog resting near his feet lifted her head, sensing his change in energy. She moved a little closer, placing her chin gently near his shoe. The tattoo on her ear, it was the same symbol he had seen on the dog who saved him years ago. It wasn't the exact same number, but it belonged to the same organization. The memory wasn't perfect, but the feeling was clear. That tattoo wasn't a coincidence. It was a reminder of a moment that had changed everything for him. A moment between life and loss. Rahim leaned forward and gently touched the dog's head. She didn't flinch this time. Her eyes softened, and she took a slow breath, as if she could feel the connection growing. In the following days, Rahim grew even more curious about her past. He took photos of the tattoo and searched the internet for the organization. He found bits and pieces of information, but nothing clear enough. Finally, he wrote an email to the rescue group, explaining that he had adopted a stray dog with their mark and wanted to know more about her. While waiting for a reply, Rahim focused on building trust with her. He named her Nala, choosing a gentle and simple name that felt right for her. Every day, he sat beside her, spoke to her in a calm voice, fed her by hand sometimes, and took slow walks around the garden. Each day, she grew a bit braver, a bit more willing to believe she was safe. One afternoon, Rahim received an email from the rescue organization. His hands trembled a little as he opened it. The message explained that the tattoo belonged to dogs who had once been in their training programs. They asked for a clearer picture so they could check their records. Rahim quickly sent them more photos. Later that evening, he received another message, this time with more detail. The dog he adopted was indeed part of their program. Her name had always been Nala. She had been trained carefully, but an injury and a frightening accident had caused her to develop fear and stress. She had been removed from the program and placed under temporary care. But during a storm, she had escaped. They had been searching for her, but months went by without any sign. They thought she might not have survived. Rahim read every word slowly. His heart felt heavy and warm at the same time. This dog had been trained to save people, just like the one who saved him. She had gone through hardship, fear, and loneliness. She had survived on the streets until someone found her, and now she was with him. He glanced at Nala, who was lying on the floor, watching him with calm, gentle eyes. She didn't know what he had learned, but she could feel the shift in his emotions. Rahim kneeled down and stroked her head softly. She leaned into his hand for the first time, trusting him completely in that moment. "Thank you," he whispered, though he wasn't sure whether he was thanking her or the memory she represented. From that day onward, Rahim felt a deep sense of responsibility toward her. She wasn't just a stray dog someone had forgotten. She was a survivor. She had a past filled with purpose and bravery. The tattoo that once confused him now made perfect sense. Nala remained quiet, gentle, and cautious. But every day, she revealed a little more of herself. She began to wag her tail when Rahim called her name. She began to walk closer to him during their outings. She began to sleep peacefully, without curling into a tight ball. The connection between them grew stronger, like two lives slowly remembering they were meant to cross paths. Rahim didn't know everything about her story yet, but he knew enough to understand that Nala wasn't just a dog he saved. In many ways, she was a reminder of the day he had been saved too. Rahim spent the next few days thinking about Nala's past. Every time he looked at her, he felt a mix of sadness and admiration. She wasn't just any stray dog. She had once been trained to help people, to find the lost, and to guide rescue teams. But something had happened that changed her life completely. She had gone from being a confident working dog to a frightened animal struggling to survive alone. Rahim wanted to understand everything. He wanted to know what she had been through, who had trained her, and why she had ended up abandoned on the streets. With these thoughts in mind, he sent another message to the rescue organization, asking for more details. He didn't expect a long reply, but he hoped they would tell him something that would help him care for Nala better. The next morning, he received an email with a short video attached. When he opened it, he saw a recording of Nala during her early training days. Her fur was smooth and bright, her posture confident, her tail high as she walked beside her trainer. She responded to commands with fast movements and eager eyes. She looked strong, talented, and full of purpose. Rahim felt his chest tighten as he watched her. It was hard to believe she was the same dog now lying on his living room floor, curled up like she didn't want to be seen. The organization explained in their message that Nala had been one of their most promising dogs. She learned quickly, listened carefully, and showed a natural skill for finding lost people. But an injury during a rescue practice session had changed her behavior. She had become frightened of loud noises, sudden movements, and unfamiliar places. They had tried to help her recover, but then a severe storm hit the region. During the chaos, Nala had escaped from her temporary shelter. Weeks passed, then months, without any trace of her. They thought she was gone forever. Rahim looked at Nala, who was sleeping peacefully near his feet. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "You went through all that, all alone." Nala opened her eyes slightly at the sound of his voice. She looked up at him with a calm, trusting expression that made his heart warm. Rahim decided then that he would help her heal, no matter how long it took. She had once been trained to save people. Now, he wanted to save her in return. He started by creating a daily routine for her. In the mornings, they took slow walks around the neighborhood. At first, Nala seemed nervous whenever a car passed by or someone walked too close. Her ears went back, and she took tiny steps. But Rahim always stayed beside her, speaking gently, letting her know she was safe. Each day, the walks became a little easier for her. She began sniffing the ground with curiosity, lifting her head to enjoy the wind, and even wagging her tail at small birds that fluttered nearby. Rahim also started giving her simple training exercises, not the intense commands she had once learned, but small tasks like sitting, waiting, and walking beside him without pulling the leash. Nala responded slowly but steadily. She didn't always understand at first, but her eyes brightened each time Rahim praised her. One afternoon, Rahim took her to a quiet field outside the town. The grass was soft and tall, and the air was peaceful. He removed her leash and let her explore freely. At first, she stayed close to him, but curiosity soon pulled her forward. She walked ahead, sniffing the ground, chasing the scent of something invisible. Rahim followed at a slow pace, watching her every move. For the first time since he adopted her, she seemed relaxed. When Nala looked back at him, her eyes shone with a spark of confidence he had not seen before. It looked like she was remembering who she once was. Rahim smiled, feeling proud of her progress. As they spent more time together, Rahim also tried to learn more about her habits. He observed how she reacted to different sounds, how she behaved around strangers, and what made her nervous. He found that she didn't like sudden loud noises, but she was comfortable with soft music. She avoided crowded places but enjoyed open spaces. She didn't trust new people easily, but she grew calm whenever Rahim was nearby. One evening, something remarkable happened. Rahim was sitting on the floor, reading a book, when Nala slowly walked toward him. She stood still for a moment, then gently placed her head on his knee. It was the first time she had shown affection on her own. Rahim put down the book and lightly stroked her back. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let out a soft breath and rested comfortably beside him. That small moment felt like a huge victory, one he would remember forever. Days turned into weeks. Nala became more lively, more trusting, and more connected to him. She followed him around the house, watched him while he worked, and sat near the door waiting for their evening walks. She began to look healthier too. Her fur grew thicker, her appetite improved, and her steps gained strength. Still, Rahim couldn't stop thinking about the tattoo. It was more than a mark. It felt like a key to something they hadn't discovered yet. One afternoon, he received a call from the rescue organization. The person on the phone said, "We found more details about Nala's past. Her last trainer left something in her file. Would you like to hear it?" Rahim listened carefully as they explained that Nala had once been part of a search mission in a mountain region, and that she had shown incredible bravery during training. Her loyalty and determination made her stand out among the other dogs. The organization believed she would have become one of their best search dogs if her injury had not changed her behavior. They also explained that many of their dogs carried the same tattoo symbol. It was a mark of recognition, used only for their trained rescue dogs. Hearing this made Rahim sit still for a moment. His mind drifted back to the blurry memory of the dog that had saved him years ago. He didn't know if that dog had been Nala, or if it had just belonged to the same group, but either way, their stories were connected. After the call ended, Rahim sat quietly beside Nala. She was lying on her blanket, her eyes half closed. He reached out and placed his hand gently on her head. She leaned into his touch, with trust. "You're special," he whispered. "You've always been special." He realized that Nala was not just another dog who needed a home. She was a survivor with a history full of courage, pain, and strength. She had lost her path, but now she was finding it again with him. Rahim promised himself that he would protect her the same way she or a dog like her had protected him years ago. Their connection was not an accident. It was something deeper, something that felt guided by fate. And as Nala closed her eyes and rested peacefully beside him, Rahim knew that this journey was only beginning. Every day with her would bring new discoveries, new challenges, and new moments of trust. He didn't know the full story yet, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nala had come into his life for a reason, and he would spend as long as it took to help her become the brave, confident dog she was meant to be again. Rahim never expected how deeply Nala would become a part of his life. Every day with her felt like a new chapter, a new step toward trust and healing. She had changed so much since the first day he saw her sitting quietly in the corner of the shelter. Now she followed him with calm confidence, slept peacefully without fear, and walked beside him like she belonged there. The connection between them had grown strong enough that Rahim no longer saw her as a rescued dog. He saw her as part of his family. One cool evening, Rahim decided to go on a long walk with Nala, on a trail outside the town. It was the same trail he used to visit years ago, long before the difficult event in the mountains that had changed his perspective on life. He packed some snacks and a bottle of water in a small backpack and called Nala. She ran toward him with soft excitement, her tail moving slowly. He placed her leash on gently, and they both stepped out into the fresh air. The sky was turning golden as the sun began to set. The quiet path was surrounded by tall trees, their leaves rustling softly with the wind. Birds chirped overhead, and the world felt peaceful. Nala walked close to Rahim, occasionally sniffing the plants and listening to distant sounds. She looked more confident than ever before. After about an hour of walking, they reached a viewpoint on a hill. The view stretched far, showing the soft lights of the town below. Rahim sat on a large, flat rock and took a deep breath. He felt calm. Nala sat beside him, her body relaxed, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "You're doing so well," Rahim said gently to her. "I'm proud of you." Nala pressed her head lightly against his leg, her way of showing affection without words. Moments like these made Rahim feel that adopting her had been one of the best decisions of his life. After a little rest, Rahim decided to explore a narrow path leading down the hill. It was a path he hadn't walked in years. He took a careful step, then another, and Nala followed without hesitation. The ground was a bit uneven, but he didn't think much of it. They continued walking deeper, where the trees were thicker and the air cooler. Suddenly, the earth beneath Rahim shifted slightly. Before he could react, his foot slipped on a hidden loose stone. He tried to steady himself, but the ground was steep and unstable. In a moment, he lost his balance completely. His body slid down the slope, his hands reaching out to grab anything he could. He felt branches scratch against his arms as he rolled a few feet down, stopping only when his shoulder hit a small rock. He let out a sharp breath, feeling the pain in his leg and shoulder. He tried to sit up, but the uneven ground and the sudden shock made it difficult. He tested his leg again. It hurt badly when he moved it. He realized he might not be able to walk easily. Above him, Nala barked loudly, her voice filled with worry. She ran along the edge of the slope, trying to find a way down to him. Rahim tried to calm her with his voice. "It's okay, Nala, I'm here." But she didn't seem calm at all. She barked again, louder this time, the sound echoing through the quiet woods. Nala's barking reminded Rahim of something. A memory of another dog barking through wind and rain years ago, guiding rescuers to his location. The realization sent a chill through him. It felt like history was repeating itself. Nala tried coming down toward him, but Rahim worried she might get stuck too. "Stay there, girl," he said softly. But Nala didn't listen. She ran back up the path, disappearing behind the trees. Rahim felt worry rise in his chest. He called out her name, but she didn't return. Pain made it hard for him to move, and the sky was slowly darkening. He took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "She's smart," he whispered to himself. "She'll find help." Minutes passed slowly. Each sound in the woods made him look up. Finally, he heard Nala barking again, this time from a distance. Her barks were sharp, rhythmic, and persistent, almost as if she were calling someone. Rahim's heart beat faster. He hoped she wasn't just barking randomly. He hoped she was guiding someone. Then, faint voices reached him. "Do you hear that? It sounds like a dog. It's coming from over there." Rahim closed his eyes in relief. Nala had found people. Soon, 3 hikers appeared at the edge of the slope. They looked down and spotted Rahim immediately. One of them said, "Are you injured?" "Don't worry. We'll help you." Nala stood beside them, her eyes fixed on Rahim as if making sure they were really going to help. The hikers carefully climbed down and helped Rahim stand up. He leaned on one of them as the others guided him back to the main path. Nala walked close, her eyes never leaving him. Every few seconds, she gave a soft whine, as if checking whether he was okay. After reaching safer ground, Rahim sat down on a flat rock to catch his breath. One hiker said, "Your dog is amazing." She ran to us, barking non-stop until we followed her. "She knew you needed help." Rahim looked at Nala with awe. Her calm eyes held a mixture of concern and confidence. She had been frightened when he fell, yet she remembered something deep inside her, something from her training, something from her past. She had acted without hesitation, trusting her instincts. "You saved me," Rahim whispered to her. She moved closer and gently touched his hand with her nose. It was her quiet way of saying, "I'm here. The hikers helped Rahim back to his car. Though his leg hurt, he felt grateful. He knew that without Nala, the situation could have become dangerous. The forest was large, and the trail was quiet. No one might have found him for hours. But Nala had acted quickly and bravely. Back home, Rahim rested on the sofa with Nala sitting beside him like a loyal guardian. He placed his hand on her head and felt a deep sense of connection. Everything that had happened made one thing clear. Nala was not just recovering from her past, she was showing who she truly was. She was still a rescue dog, with instincts and courage rooted deeply within her. Even after everything she had been through, her heart still held the strength to protect someone she cared about. Rahim realized that the day he chose her at the shelter wasn't a simple decision. It was meant to happen. The tattoo, the memory, the connection, it all led to this moment. Their paths had crossed for a reason, and as Nala gently rested her head on his lap, Rahim understood that their journey was far from over. In fact, it was becoming something even more meaningful than he had ever imagined. When the officers left, the house became quiet again, but the silence felt different this time. It was not heavy anymore. It was peaceful, like something old had finally been released. Sarah stood near the window, looking outside. Watching the two officers get into their car, she felt her shoulders loosen in a way she had not felt in years. Daniel stood beside her, observing her face carefully. He could see relief mixed with a deep sadness, but also something new strength. They went back to the living room and sat across from each other. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They both needed a little time to understand what had just happened. The truth had come out at last, and even though the day had been heavy, it had closed a chapter that had once seemed impossible to close. Sarah looked down at the tattoo on her wrist and touched it softly. The gold flower shimmered under the light. She remembered how she felt when she got it, scared, bruised, and unsure of her future. Now, touching it again, she could feel the difference. That same mark now represented not fear but courage. Daniel watched her with quiet respect. He had never asked her for more than she could give, and she knew she could trust him fully. After a moment, Sarah lifted her head and smiled gently. "It is strange," she said. "One tattoo brought so much pain, but later, it also brought help and hope. And then it brought you back." Daniel nodded. "Maybe things come into our lives for more than one purpose," he replied. "Sometimes they break us, and sometimes they save us, and sometimes they bring the right people together." Sarah looked down again, thinking, and then met his eyes with a soft laugh. "You sound wiser now," she said. "More than when we first met." "Sarah?" "Life teaches," Daniel said lightly. "Some lessons are slow, some are hard, but they teach." Sarah felt a warm feeling rise in her chest. She didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. She wasn't alone anymore. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking not about the past, but about small, simple things. It felt refreshing. They spoke about things they enjoyed, places they wanted to visit, and plans they might make one day. Daniel listened to Sarah more deeply than before, understanding how her life had shaped her. Sarah responded with trust, knowing he had stood by her in ways few others ever had. Evening arrived quietly, and soft sunlight filled the room. Daniel stood up and made tea for both of them. When he returned, he handed her a cup and sat beside her on the couch, leaving a comfortable space between them. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, and she appreciated his gentle care. They looked out the window at the orange sky. "Everything feels different now," Sarah said softly. "Because you're free," Daniel replied. She nodded. She was free from lies, from fear, from the guilt she had carried inside her heart for too long. Someone finally listened. Someone believed her, and someone cared enough to stand beside her through the storm. After a long pause, she looked at him again. "Daniel," she said quietly, "thank you for taking her." He looked confused for a second. "Her?" "The girl in the alley," Sarah replied. "You said, hold on. I'll take her." That was the moment everything changed. You didn't look at me like I was strange. You didn't ask what happened. You simply took me with you and gave me safety without question. She looked down, swallowing. That one decision saved my life. Daniel felt his breath catch. He remembered that moment clearly, the confusion, the worry, the feeling that he needed to protect her. He had not understood anything then, but he knew she was in danger. You saved your own life, Daniel said gently. I only helped you get to the right place. Sarah shook her head. If you hadn't been there, I don't know where I would have ended up. That day, that moment, it meant everything. Daniel's eyes softened, and he placed his hand slowly near hers. He did not touch her hand directly, he wanted her to decide. After a moment, Sarah moved her hand closer until their fingers rested side by side. She didn't grip his hand. She simply let it rest near his, and that was enough. It was a quiet sign of trust. Hours passed without either of them noticing. When it grew dark, Daniel asked if she wanted him to stay until she felt comfortable being alone. Sarah hesitated. She was strong, but the day had worn her out. She didn't want to be alone with her thoughts, just yet. She nodded gently, and Daniel agreed to stay in the living room while she rested in her room. Before leaving, she turned to him. Will you still be here in the morning? She asked in a soft voice that carried both hope and uncertainty. Yes, he said firmly, I will be here. Sarah smiled, a small but genuine smile. It was the first smile of the day that reached her eyes. Later, while lying in bed, she looked again at the tattoo on her wrist. For the first time, she did not see pain in it. She saw survival. She saw the moment she had walked into the police station. She saw the officers who had listened, and she saw Daniel standing firmly beside her, never stepping away. She closed her eyes and slept peacefully, something she had not done in a long time. Early in the morning, sunlight gently touched the edges of her curtains. She woke up feeling lighter. She took a deep breath, stretched her arms, and walked quietly to the living room. Daniel was already awake, sitting with a cup of tea, looking out the window. His eyes were calm, and his expression was relaxed. When he saw her, he stood up. Good morning, he said with a warm smile. Good morning, she replied. Did you sleep? A little, he admitted. But I wanted to stay awake in case you needed anything. She didn't expect that level of care. It made her feel safe in a way she hadn't known before. Come sit, Daniel said softly. They sat near the window, watching the morning light spread across the sky. The world outside looked normal, peaceful, and open like a new beginning. Sarah finally broke the silence. What now? She asked. What happens next? Daniel took a slow breath. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, but he wanted her to know she was not alone. What happens next, he said, is whatever you choose. You decide your next steps. And I'll walk with you, if you want me to. Sarah's eyes softened, and she nodded. I want that, she whispered. He smiled in relief. Then we'll move forward together. They both looked at the sky again. A quiet understanding filled the room, an understanding that their connection had grown from something dark but had become something strong and meaningful. Their story had begun in fear, continued in truth, and now stepped into hope. Sarah felt the weight of her past finally loosen its grip. She didn't know exactly where life would lead her from here, but she knew she had the courage to face it, and she knew she would not face it alone. The tattoo remained on her wrist, a mark that once represented pain and later became the key to her freedom. Now, it held a new meaning: growth, strength, and the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter she would write with patience, trust, and the quiet support of someone who had stood by her when she needed it most. The morning sun grew brighter, filling the room with warm light, as Sarah and Daniel sat together, ready for whatever would come next. Their story was no longer about fear. It was about healing, friendship, and the belief that even the darkest moments can lead to unexpected beginnings. And this time, Sarah knew she was finally ready to live her life again.